Okay, it's 3 hours Paris time, 10 hours Argentina time. Um, we'll start and we'll do the opening of this virtual conference now. First of all, good morning or good evening to all participants of the Decarbonizing Transport in an Unprecedented Global Crisis conference. My name is Francisco Furtado. I will be your host for this first session of this virtual conference. Before presenting our distinguished guests and going into some of the contents of this series of webinars, of this virtual conference, I'll call your attention and I'll highlight a relevant feature of these sessions is that UF interpretation is available. These sessions can be heard, can be listened to in English, in Spanish, and in some cases in Portuguese, which is the case of this session, but not all of them. If you noticed, in the bottom of your screen or your Zoom app, there will be an icon with the world symbol. You can click on that icon and choose the language you want to listen to. A note I give about this is that we advise you not to mute the original audio because this way, if you don't mute, you will be able to listen to your preferred language, to the channel you selected, all through the conference, irrespective if the speakers are speaking in English or in Spanish. Another and highlight is that all of the sessions are being recorded, and all of these sessions will be available online in our webpage of the conference, and they will be available both in English with the English soundtrack and with the Spanish soundtrack. Also, when there are presentations, for instance, the presentation I'm just doing now, this will also be available on the website. Now, for some important background to this conference. The conference takes place, it's integrated into a wider project. It's called Decarbonizing Transport in Emerging Economies. It's a project that's been implemented by the International Transport Forum, the Wuppertal Institute, and it's financed by the International Climate Initiative, which is a part of the German Ministry of the Environment. This project takes place in 4 countries and their respective regions, namely Argentina, Azerbaijan, India, and Morocco. Of course, this conference, Decarbonizing Transport in an Unprecedented Global Crisis, is part of the Argentinian chapter of the project, and also as not just Argentinian, I would say, but Latin American reach. For the project in Argentina, and specifically for this conference, I should also mention the cooperation, the very relevant cooperation of the Transport Ministry of Argentina and the Sustentar Association, which is part of the LEDSLAC platform. The conference starts today. It goes on until the 30th of July. We'll have in total 9 open sessions. The sessions always start at the same time, 3 hours Central European time, 3 hours PM Central European time, 10 hours Buenos Aires time. Today, it will be a bit special because today we have a double session. We start with the introduction and welcome, but then after a short break, a short 10 minutes break, we will have the next session, panel with discussion on decarbonization, economic recovery, and resilience. And I highlight that transport decarbonization, while attending to the needs of economic recovery and the resilience of the transport systems, it's the overall theme of this conference and the series of webinars that we will be doing along the month of July. So moving now to the introduction and welcome itself. The first thing I have to highlight the list of distinguished guests that honor us with their presence today at this session. I have to mention Minister of Transport of Argentina, Mario Meoni, Minister of Transport and Telecommunications of Chile, Gloria Hutt, the Director General of the Federal Ministry of the Environment from German, Carsten Sach, and Young Tae Kim, Secretary General of the International Transport Forum. With us, we will also have additional speakers in this introduction session from the organizations that are cooperating to make possible this conference. And I myself, I'm Francisco Furtado, I'm your host. I'm the lead of the Decarbonizing Transport in Emerging Economies project, and I work in the International Transport Forum as an analyst and a modeler. But without further delays, I present to you Young Tae Kim, is Secretary General of the International Transport Forum. And Young Tae, the floor is yours. I give you the floor for the opening speech of this session and the conference.
Thank you, Francisco. Buenos días a todos. Me permitiré decir algunas palabras en español.
Good morning. I will say a few
Es un
words
honor
in
para mí darles
Spanish.
la
It is an
bienvenida
honor
como
to welcome
Secretario
you
General del
as
Foro
Secretary
Internacional de
General
Transportes
of
a
the
esta
International
serie de
Transport Forum
conferencias
to the
virtuales
series
que
of
nos
virtual
reunirán a lo largo
conferences
del
that
mes de
will
julio.
bring us together throughout the
Antes
month
que
of
nada,
July.
y para
Above
quienes no lo
all, and
conocen,
for those of you who are not
permítanme hablar un
familiar
poco
with
sobre
it,
el Foro
allow
Internacional de
me to
Transportes, o
talk to
FIT.
you about the ITF.
El FIT es una organización
The ITF is
intergubernamental
an
con 60
intergovernmental
países miembros.
organization with 60
Entre ellos,
member countries,
13 encuentran en
including
América Latina,
13 that are
Argentina,
located in
Chile y
Latin
México.
America, Argentina,
La
Chile,
organización
and
tiene
Mexico included.
autonomía
The
política
organization
y
has
está
political autonomy
administrativamente
and
ligada
is,
a la
from an
OCDE.
administrative perspective,
El objetivo de
associated
FIT
to
es
the
promover un
OECD.
mejor
The
diálogo para
purpose
un mejor
of this
transporte.
association is to promote
Busca
dialogue and
incrementar
improve
la
transportation
importancia de
and
las
seeks to
políticas de
increase the
transporte
importance
en la
of
agenda
transportation
pública
policies
y
in the public
promover el
agenda, as well
diálogo
as
entre
promoting
todos los
dialogue
actores
among
pertinentes
all the
para este fin.
stakeholders
En este
in
marco,
this
es la
topic.
única
Within this
organización
framework, it is the
internacional que
only
se
international
concentra en todos los
organization
modos
that
de transporte.
focuses on all modes of
También busca
transport.
apoyar a sus
It
países
also
miembros
seeks to
en el
support its
análisis
member
de sus
countries in
políticas públicas de
analyzing public
transporte.
policies
Todas
regarding
sus
transportation.
actividades están
All of its
basadas en
activities are
rigurosa
based on
investigación cuantitativa y
very
cualitativa.
thorough quantitative and
El FIT
qualitative
organiza
research.
anualmente
The
la Cumbre de
ITF
Transporte.
organizes an annual
Es el
summit,
principal evento de
which is
política
the
global de
main
transporte
event
que
focused on
reúne a
global transport
ministros,
policies
jefes de
and which gathers
organizaciones
ministers,
internacionales,
heads of international
líderes de opinión al
organizations,
más alto nivel.
opinion leaders of the highest
Debido a la
level as well.
crisis del
Due to the
COVID-19, los
COVID-19
países miembros
crisis,
de FIT
the
han
member
decidido
countries of the
excepcionalmente
ITF have
postergar
decided
la Cumbre de
to
Transportes
exceptionally
del
postpone this
2020.
summit that was
Esperamos poder
expected
anunciar la
to
nueva
take place
fecha
in
de la
2020.
siguiente cumbre
We hope we are
próximamente
able to
con
announce
previo
the next
acuerdo
date
de
of the
nuestros
summit
países miembros.
with prior agreement, of course,
Nuestro
of all our
trabajo
member countries.
riguroso de
Our
investigación y
rigorous
promoción
work
del
that
diálogo
focuses on research
igualmente
and
se ve
dialogue
reflejado en
promotion
esta conferencia que nos
is,
reúne
of
hoy.
course, reflected in this
Me gustaría
conference
en este
that
momento
brings us together today.
agradecer de
I
manera
would like to
especial la
thank
presencia de las
today,
autoridades
especially the
que me
presence of
acompañan
all the
a
authorities that
inaugurar
are
este
joining
evento.
us today
Es un
in
honor
this official
contar con
opening.
ustedes.
It is an honor to have you here
Ministro
today.
Mario Meoni,
Minister Mario
es un
Meoni,
placer poder
it is a
conocerle
pleasure
finalmente
to be able to
y tener
finally
este
meet
espacio
you
común.
and have this
Le
common
agradezco por la
space for
confianza en
discussion. I would
nuestra
like to thank you
organización para
for
la
your continued
coordinación de
trust
este
in our
evento y
organization
espero que
and for
nuestra
helping us
relación con su
make this
gestión
event
en
a
el
reality.
ministerio
Also, I
pueda
would like to thank
seguir
you for your
siendo
work in the ministry,
fructífera en el
and I
futuro.
hope that it will continue to be fruitful in the
Ministra Gloria
future.
Hood S. Me
I
complace
would
ver a
also
una
like to
amiga de
thank
FIT
Minister Gloria
y
Hutt
volver a
as a
compartir
friend
un
of
espacio
the
con usted
ITF.
en el
I am
marco de
very happy to
nuestras
be sharing this
actividades.
space with you today again within the
Durante
framework
su
of our
gestión,
activities.
ha sido una de
During
nuestras
your work
principales
at the
aliadas
ministry, you have been
en
one of our
promover la
main allies in
descarbonización de
promoting
transportes en América Latina,
decarbonization of transport in
acompañada
Latin
de un
America,
desarrollo
together
sostenible para
with
la región a
sustainable
nivel social y
development for
económico.
the region and
Es
for
grato ver que esto
social and
sigue siendo
economic
el caso.
development as well.
Now a little bit in English. Director General Carsten Sash, I'm pleased and thankful to be able to share this floor with you. The MEO's initiative has been crucial for the development of ITF's Decarbonizing Transport initiative. This series of conferences, as well as the wider DTE project, bear testimony to that. Please also convey my best regards to State Secretary Flassbart. De vuelta en español, igualmente doy las gracias a todos los
Back
colegas
to Spanish,
expertos
I would like to
y
thank
funcionarios
all of my
públicos
expert
quienes nos
colleagues and
acompañaran y
public
compartieran sus
experts
ideas
as
con
well who have
nosotros a
shared
lo
their
largo de
ideas
las
with
próximas
us
semanas.
throughout and will
Esta
share their
serie de
ideas throughout the
conferencias
next
tiene
weeks.
vocación
These
global
series of
y se
conferences have a
centra en Argentina
global focus and
desde
is
que Argentina
centered
se unió
on
al FIT en
Argentina. Since
2015.
Argentina joined the
Hemos
ITF in
trabajado de la
2015,
mano con
we have
autoridades
worked ever
nacionales
since with the
para que
national
el sector
authorities
transporte
so that the
participe en
transportation
el
sector can
desarrollo sostenible
participate
del
in
país.
the sustainable
A nivel
development of the
social,
country. At a
hemos
social
trabajado
level,
arduamente
we
para
have worked
promover la
hard
seguridad
to
vial en
promote
ciudades argentinas.
roadway
A nivel
security in
económico,
the cities of
en el
Argentina. From an
2018
economic perspective, in
hicimos una investigación
2018,
que buscaba
we carried
responder a
out
los
a research
desafíos para la
to
competitividad
address the
económica
challenges
del
regarding
puerto de Buenos Aires,
competitiveness
principal
in
puerto
and
de
other issues in the
contenedores del
port of
país.
Buenos Aires, especially
A
container
nivel
ports throughout the
medioambiental,
country. From an
desde el
environmental perspective,
2019
since
llevamos dos proyectos
2019,
clave.
we have carried out
DTEE,
2 key
el motivo
projects.
que nos trae hoy aquí,
DTEE is one of
y
them
descarbonización de
and is the
transportes en las
reason we are
ciudades
gathered here
latinoamericanas.
today,
Buenos
that
Aires es
studies
uno
the
de los protagonistas
decarbonization
de
of
este
transport
segundo
in this
proyecto que
region.
llevamos de la mano con el
We have
PIB.
developed this project
La
together
serie de
with the
conferencias que
PIB.
empieza hoy
A series
se
of
enmarca
conferences
en
that
esta
start
voluntad de
today are
apoyar a
within
las
the framework
autoridades
of
argentinas
this
en la
desire to
reducción de las
support the
emisiones de
Argentine
CO2
authorities
en el
in
sector
reducing
transporte,
CO2
de
emissions in
mano
the
con
transport
otras
sector,
prioridades de
together with
política
other
pública.
priorities regarding
El
public
título de la serie
policies.
de conferencias
The title
hace
of the
llamado a
series of
una realidad.
conferences
El
is related
COVID-19
to the
ha traído una
reality of
nueva crisis
COVID-19,
global
which has brought
sin
about a
precedentes
global
y de un
crisis
tamaño
which
que
is
no
of
hemos
an
conocido en un
unprecedented
siglo.
nature.
Esta crisis conlleva
This
nuevos
crisis
desafíos y
entails
genera
new
nuevas
challenges
necesidades sanitarias,
and creates
económicas
new
y sociales
health-related
para
needs
nuestros
and
países.
also economic and social needs for
Descarbonizar
our
el transporte
countries.
en este contexto
Decarbonizing
es
transport
un
within this
reto que debemos
context is
asumir
a
a fin de
challenge that we
cumplir con
must
los
face in
compromisos
order to fulfill
medioambientales del
the
planeta.
commitments
Espero que
related to
las
the environment
discusiones de
in our
estas
planet.
próximas
I
semanas
hope that the
sean terreno
discussions in the
fértil
next few weeks
para
will be
futuras
fertile
soluciones y
background for
acciones
future
que nos
solutions and
acerquen más a
actions
una
that will
movilidad
bring us
realmente
closer
sostenible.
to a
Muchas
truly
gracias.
sustainable mobility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Young Tae Kim, Secretary General of the ITF, for your words. Thank you for presenting to many of the people in the attendance that don't know what the ITF is, to give them a brief presentation, highlighting the work that has been going on in Argentina, and also highlighting the topic and the challenges that we face nowadays, and this issue of the need to decarbonize transport, address climate change, but at the same time, not ignoring the challenges and the economic challenges and social challenges that we face as a consequence of the pandemic of COVID-19. But now, without further ado, I will move to our next distinguished speaker. He's the Director General of International and European Policy, Climate Policy at the Federal Ministry for the Environment in Germany, Carsten Sach. He represents here, I should say this is important, he represents here the project, the Decarbonizing Transport in Emerging Economies project funders. Without them, this conference and this overall work that we are doing would have not been possible. So good evening, Carsten Sach. We're very glad to have you with us today, and I give you the floor, please.
Thank you, Francisco, for this kind introduction. Honorable Minister Meoni, Honorable Minister Hutt, dear Secretary General Yang Tae Kim, dear speakers, colleagues, friends, thank you for having me. And as you said, in my department, I'm also responsible to finance climate change policies internationally through our program, International Climate Initiative. And one project we're running is, or supporting, is transport decarbonization in times of unprecedented global crises. And therefore, I'm very happy to supporting your excellent work here. We all know, and the Secretary General has made that very clear, that the current corona pandemic poses enormous challenges to all of us. People fear for their own health, as well as of the lives of their families, and we are deprived of many things which got normal to us, and companies and people are fearing that their economic basis is eroding. At the same time, and that's why we are discussing here, we have another huge challenge, climate change, which is progressing. We see enormous events also this year. And therefore, is a trivial conclusion that solutions to both challenges must go hand in hand. And we think that many of the issues we had planned for the next 10 years are just now happening in the next 6 to 18 months, because we are all discussing on how best to recover. And so we need to act swiftly and quickly. And the UN Secretary General says the motto is building back better, more inclusive, not just returning to the old normal that would have the consequence that we have missed a chance. And therefore, we should be working towards a green recovery worldwide. In Europe, the EU plans to update our ambition goal on our climate ambition until the end of 2020, and we are just in the midst of discussing economic recovery plan oriented towards the Green Deal, and that is another hat I'm wearing, the head of the EU presidency, and that is probably the big challenge and the wonderful task we are having. We in Germany, just 4 weeks ago, we approved key points of our own economic and future recovery package to deal with the economic consequences. And we are proud that out of this, a large portion has been devoted also to building a new transport infrastructure, but for green transformative purposes. And we are convinced that we will only thrive economically if we are able to emerge out of the crisis in a more climate-friendly and sustainable way. And that means that the transformation of the energy, the mobility, and the heat sector needs to be taken into account when designing our policies. The transport sector, and you are well aware of that, contributes approximately 1/4 of all energy-related carbon dioxide emissions, and therefore it is important to work towards just more climate-friendly modes of transport as well, and your forum just plays a major role in achieving that. Our ICI program, the International Climate Initiative, has quite an important and growing portfolio of sustainable mobility projects. Currently, we're funding it with an overall funding volume of close to 100 million euros. Exactly, it's 93.4 million euros, and that's allocated in 16 ongoing projects, and furthermore, 2 new projects are planned with a funding volume of 35 million projects. So transport, green transport, getting the infrastructure for transport right is a priority for us. And we know that there is not a solution which fits everybody, and we know that there are many aspects to be taken into account when designing recovery programs which fit countries. And that's why we have launched, together the World Resources Institute and other international organizations and leading think tanks and international dialogue process to develop potential approaches in thematic areas such as resilience, energy, finance, biodiversity, but also transport. We will be developing together with WRI a final report based on institutional expertise, which we would like to share and discuss with other fora and with countries. Within the NDC partnership, we and UN Alliance Page, the Partnership for Action on Green Recovery, we will financially support economic advisors on green recovery to partner countries. So to come to the end, I think it is important that we link up the different initiatives, including the ones you are undertaking with a focus in Argentina, learn from each other, and therefore being able to upscaling and adjusting our course. And we are very pleased, as I said in the beginning, that we are able to funding these activities. We wish you all the best for your project. We are proud funders, and that's why I'm here today. Good luck and good success in moving us forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General, for your kind words and for your wishes of good luck. I would highlight some of the words you said, and that this is a moment to act swiftly. And I think there was actually a philosopher that once said, there are months where decades happen, while sometimes there's decades where nothing happens. And I think indeed we are living such a moment. And your words that we need to build back, but build back better with new transformative green transform, I think they give comfort to all in the transport community and that work in these projects, that indeed, despite the crisis, which is of course a terrible thing, there is also here an opportunity to build back better. But without further delay, I will move to our next distinguished guest, Minister Mario Meoni of Argentina. I must say that throughout this project, we started, our first meeting was last September, but throughout this project and different administrations, the Ministry of Transport of Argentina has been absolutely essential. They've always been our main partner. They have cooperated with us in this conference and in other tasks before that. I thank you for that. And I also thank you for honoring us with your presence today. But without further ado, Minister of Transport of Argentina, Mario Meoni, I give you the floor. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Good morning. Very kind of you for allowing me the presentation. I would also like to thank the Secretary General, Mr. Kim, those of you who share with us, Mr. Haston, my colleague from Chile, Gloria Hatt, Francisco Maciel, each and every one of you who have committed themselves to work towards a more equitable scheme in environmental terms. Because what we have seen through the pandemic today, there are some issues where borders and geopolitical borders are not enough. Clearly, environmental issues are not enough to be, it's not enough for us to develop national policies, but we have to develop a framework, international framework agreement, because we have to understand this also as a pandemic, international pandemic. In Argentina, we are in the face of a very complex situation, firstly because the COVID-19 is leading us to a virtual default with serious economic problems. We are coming from a very serious situation in economic terms from the last year, and much more in terms of environmental issues. In transport, there is a backward movement, and so we have to think truly that we started with the pandemic in a much more critical situation. However, it is also true, as Kim mentioned, that it's a new opportunity we have to stand and to move forward. This pandemic has also moved the impact of the carbon emissions. Throughout these 100 days of low activity in Argentina, the environmental impact has been amazing. We haven't seen carbon emissions as the one we have seen nowadays, which is a very low environmental impact. The challenges ahead are very many. As I said, transport in Argentina is based 100% on the conventional way, railways. As you said, as you know, we have a very broad railway network that is extraordinary, a high primary commodities freight transport, with a very important development, river and maritime transport, but not low enough to lower the impact of road freight transport that is especially used by trucks in the interior of the country, and also public transportation without long distance railways. With all this, in the face of this complex situation, we have to be very proactive in terms of new schemes of transport in Argentina that can bring about substantial changes. I would like to tell you where we are. We have 18,000 units of buses for urban transport, and the interior in the provinces, there are 14,000 in the main cities, especially public transport. We have 5,000 units of long-distance buses, about 38,000 public transport buses in Argentina. We have railway lines transporting 1.5 million passengers. Many railway lines are still diesel propelled. Freight transport is 90% with trucks. As I said, river and maritime, it's a low activity for freight transport. It is led by the Buenos Aires harbor, but air is related to international commerce. But there is a very high environmental impact in that sector. Prior COVID, we were focused on, along with the productive ministry, economy ministry, in the understanding that this calls for a holistic reconversion. Those who compete in transportation in this negative impact is the manufacturing industry that has a very high impact environmental issues. Then the agricultural industry brings about a lot of pollution. We are working along those action lines in railway, and firstly, we are focusing on a very important work in the northwestern area, which is the San Martin Railway in the northwestern of Buenos Aires. In the south, Belgrano Sur, starting to work on the rest of the missing railways, such as Roca urban transport, and the Urquiza and Belgrano Norte railway lines. But we understand that in the next 6-7 years, we should go into the total reconversion for electrical railway transportation. And this will bring about a very positive impact in terms of the environment and an improvement of the quality of transportation of the people who we really care about. As to metro buses, it's a great concentration, 18,000 units for 20 million inhabitants. We are going to work on two aspects. First has to be the regulation, so as to change for electrical equipment, for example, and in between possibilities. Of course, the total reconversion to electrical units is the ideal one, but this is generated through input that is based on oil. Photovoltaic energy is of low development in Argentina, so that is not always a positive aspect. And we have another drawback. The purchase of units would mean 100% an import, so a high percentage of those make it really impossible, taking into account the context in Argentina and the cost of each unit. A conventional unit is about $150,000. A unit from abroad that is electrical is $450,000, so 3 times more. So there are many inconveniences, many problems, but we think there is an in-between possibility toward reconversion with electrical railway lines. And that's the use of DNC, not only for the transportation of passengers, but also freight. We have compressed natural gas, and that will allow us to go to an in-between period until we can fully develop the projects of electrical units in Argentina, a process that the productive ministry is developing with manufacturing industries in Argentina, understanding that lithium is a very important natural resource to purchase, to develop batteries, but that requires a type of investment that is very hefty and it's very complex. And we want to move forward and develop a program along those lines. We are also actively working towards the development of freight railway transport, and will bring a negative impact in the environment, in the low emissions, and we are developing new railway lines along the countries, rebuilding lines that will allow us to move towards that. Railway transportation increased 27% regarding the last semester, 39% with reference to the last month. And we are developing a very active policy to lower costs and with a positive impact in terms of carbon emissions. As you know, in a brief synthesis, we try to convey the aims and the goals we are working on. The pandemic has focused on the transportation of people. In Argentina, our president has focused on health, life, of course, later on, work, heritage, and the development on work on different areas. In environmental issues, we had an inter-ministry meeting as to the commitments, environmental commitments for Argentina. We lead decisions in terms of having a cleaner economy, a greener transport, and we're going to be working on that on the next month. The next month, we should have the necessary regulations in place, although we are still working on the development of investment for the electrification of the railway lines. And we are going to move more holistically towards a 4-year process to change the fleet of transports in general, also in terms of policies for the transportation of passengers towards electrical units. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I took longer than I should, but I'm very pleased to be part of this interesting conference, and we hope we can meet soon again. Thank you very much.
Minister Mario Meoni, I am the one that says thank you. Thank you for your speech. It was indeed a very broad overview, but where you indeed made a good summary of the several challenges facing the transport system and the initiatives that exist, or potential initiatives to decarbonize the transport system in Argentina. I think it was very useful as a speech for all of our attendees to be aware of the situation, what is going there in Argentina, what measures are being planned, what is going on, and you also said several important things, but there are no borders for the pandemic. There's no borders for climate change problems. So sharing experiences, sharing knowledge is absolutely fundamental for us, all of us, to overcome these problems. And talking about borders and sharing, we'll go to the country right at your border, to Chile. Minister of Telecommunications and Transport, Gloria Hutt, thank you very much for having accepted our invitation to be present at this conference. Chile at the COP presidency. You yourself, Minister Hutt, are, like the Secretary General Youngte mentioned, you are participate very often in the ITF events, in the summits we organize every year in Leipzig. You are, I can say this, a champion of transport decarbonization, I would say in the region, perhaps even the world. But without more delays, I will give the floor to you, and good morning, and thank you for being with us today. Just, she's muted.
Mario Meoni. Perdón.
Okay.
Ahora sí.
Can you hear me?
Quiero agradecer la invitación y
I would
saludar.
like to thank you for the invitation and especially greet the Secretary General, Youngte Kim. We meet regularly at events of the ITF, and I would also like to thank my colleague, Mario Meoni. I haven't met him in person, but I hope I can very soon. Karsten as well. It was an honor to hear your presentation. I would like to briefly summarize and describe the vision and the situation that we have currently in Chile. First of all, maybe I do not need to delve into this issue, but the pandemic has hit the transport sector very hard. And therefore, we have many areas of transport that have been severely affected in their operation. However, we also see that what happened could be considered like a large-scale experiment that we had never been able to put into practice in reality. There would be no chance otherwise to stop all cities to evaluate the impact of fewer travel and less activity. And we would have never stopped the activities in general as strongly as it happened worldwide. And what this has created is raise awareness uh, of people in terms of controlling emissions in the cities. There is evidence of the positive impact that this reduction in travel has brought about, especially in terms of the quality of the environment in cities. Therefore, we are considering this situation as a new starting point, as a deep dive analysis of the focus points that we will be analyzing in the future. For example, the analysis of urban density as an efficient way to administer travel and transportation. But urban density is one of the most critical varieties right now to determine the risk perception that people have. So we need to reconfigure our plans. We have defined several pillars. One of them is working towards decarbonization, or at least continue working on decarbonization from the point of view of urban spaces and not just from the point of view of vehicles. This means not just replacing technology, but also making interventions so that urban cities and roads can be administered in a different way, so as to allow for better circulation and to have more space in a less contaminating way. We believe that managing space is a critical variable towards decarbonizing in an efficient manner and at the same time protect the people. Another goal that we have, which has been recommended by many international forums, is to maintain our focus on mass transportation. We believe that this is the best way to move about, and with this in mind, we have made great efforts to focus on technological reconversion. We hope to end 2020 with more than 2,000 buses renovated. That's 30% of our fleet, out of which more than 700 are electric. We believe that this is a major contribution to the quality of air, not just from the point of view of emissions, but also from the point of view of noise. The noise reduction is very palpable when these electrical buses are operating. In order to do this, we've developed new business models with public-private participation, and this has allowed us to focus on the issue of financing. As Minister Meoni said, although the initial cost of investment is high, in the long run, it is so much more affordable than diesel that the investment is recovered very quickly. Furthermore, with public-private association models that we've developed, we have been able to move forward in this reconversion without forcing the state to put in more funds for the subsidy of transportation. So the combination of electricity manufacturers and policymakers has been essential. We want to move towards electric mobility for buses and extend it throughout the country. We also want to move forward in the development of railways for short distances in order to allow the mobilization of a large number of passengers in a more sustainable way. We see with great concern that those countries that are starting to reopen and are starting to come out of the peak of the COVID-19 crisis are using their cars, their personal cars, very intensively, probably because they feel safer in a car that they can control. Therefore, this is very hard to recover. The use of public transportation is hard to recover. So we are focused on analyzing and preventing this from happening. We believe that using cars massively, again, would heavily damage cities. Therefore, we are working on measures that will make people feel confident so that when things reopen, they can go back to using public transportation and not their personal vehicles. We believe that this crisis has also allowed us to prioritize and organize the movement of people and of freight. When we've had to define, for example, essential services and essential movements or mobilization, with this in mind, we can organize better in the future in such a way as to establish, for example, access to cities in the places with a larger amount of cars or where there's more pollution in a more sustainable way. We also see that the development of technology and information for planning and for travel decisions that people make are fundamental right now. Communication technologies currently are pretty much supporting the economic life and the social and family life of the population. And this has gained an essential role, and we must develop tools so that people can make better travel decisions in an effective way as well. In this way, we may replace travel with certain platforms for communication, such as we are doing in this forum. If we calculate how much we would have spent in terms of emissions if we had held this meeting in person, may be a way to think about these things. We are also concerned about economic recovery, of course. The economy has been hit hard in the countries, and in order to recover, we will need to make great efforts. We are focusing on 3 pillars that are part of the fears that people are dealing with in emerging or when emerging from the crisis. The first one is the fear of contracting the disease. If this fear is not eliminated, then the economy will never recover, and we want people to feel safe. A second fear is a fear for their employment, for their jobs, and this of course affects the level of activity. And the third fear is a fear of a prolonged economic crisis. So if we plan only based on vehicles, or if we plan only focusing on cities and not understanding how people are reacting and how people are making their decisions, we will never reach our objectives. So our strategy is to build the trust in the population while also trying to create an environment where recovery and returning to normal activities will find people with better travel conditions, with more safety, better conditions for travel, and also trying to identify those strong gaps in Latin America and between the different cities and try to bridge those gaps as much as possible. This crisis has also made evident or more evident these gaps that already existed. So we have to work towards decarbonization, but also towards the well-being of citizens and towards a general efficiency of the economic system. In order to do this, we need to recalculate our strategic plans. And we hope that with this, we will be able to afford more well-being to our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Gloria Hutt, for your words and for the several items you mentioned during your speech. And for instance, that indeed this is was and is a large scale experience of how cities can be without so much traffic and without so much car traffic. But now, as you mentioned, there is also the risk or the danger, which is to a great extent, I must say, understandable, of people wanting to be safe and because of that getting back to their cars in an even bigger way than before. But for that, as you mentioned, there is a need to readjust our plans. We can have an opportunity here, and it's already happening in many cities, of reconfiguring the public space and how this public space is used. So I would highlight also this room for opportunity that this moment offers to us. And again, thank you very much for your participation. And now I would move to the organizations that were involved in also setting up this conference. Besides the International Transport Forum, we already heard from our Secretary General, Yang Tae-Kim, but I would move to Francisco Maciel. He's from the Let's Lack platform. Bom dia, Francisco. Good morning. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Francisco. And I would like to thank you for the invitation, Mr. Yang, Jochen, Mr. Mario Meoni, and Mrs. Gloria Hutt for leveraging my speech, pretty much. You know. And we at Let's Lack, I was thinking about a new way to present it, because I'm always presenting Let's Lack, you know, but I'm going to present this way. We are a platform for low emission development systems in Latin America and Caribbean as a branch for the Global Partnership Platform. That's as the name says, global. And we are over here in the area, we answer for, we have 2,000 members that connected. And if you connected this 2,000 member with another direct 10 people by each, you're going to talk about 20,000 people that work with low emission development systems. And if you consider that in Latin America and Caribbean and the indirect people that work with them, we are pretty much talking about everyone that is some way or another working on low emission development system in Latin America and Caribbean. So we pretty much answer for the ecosystem of low emission development systems with all the teams that are involved in that. In sense, and I would like to do a special thanks to Gloria before me, because she touched things that I was about to go in deeper, and it's wonderful to go after her. Thank you. And what I'm going to say is a little bit about our Latin American Caribbean area, talking about what was the new thing on transportation and mobility, pretty much urban areas before COVID and after the pandemic. Okay, and so I divided it into 4 new things that we were facing on that, you know, on that theme. You know, the first one would be on the planning and monitoring, and I'm gonna, you know, mention several companies, not because we are related to that in some strange sense, but just because they are related with us on this issue. Okay, so in planning and monitoring, we were right, you know, coming from a traditional way to plan and monitor when we had the OD, you know, research that was usually run, you know, every and each 10 years to plan and monitor with Google Maps, with Waze, with TomTom, with Microsoft platforms, you know, besides the dedicated platforms. That was a change, you know, between something that we had like very poor relation with data from time to time, you know, to something that we have, you know, actually daily data to analyze, and that's sometimes a problem as well. But you know, in the terms of rides, and pretty much I'm talking about rides right now. I'm not talking about mass transportation or individual transportation. I'm talking about the way people go from one place to another. we were facing, we're still facing the Uber's, era with the Didi Chung area, just in the side of it with a different model, Cabify, Lyft, and all the locals, and the niches on rides as Lady, that only rides with, women drivers and women going with them. And we're talking about pooling in the sense of cars, and several local companies of carpooling, but we are starting to have ways operating on that. In another way, a little bit, coming back from something that we're, talking about in the past, we're talking about sharing bikes, of course, and they're all electric, sharing scooters, and they're all electric, the ones that are not, but the bikes are not, that we are not doing the effort were electric, the scooters all electric, and the cars, some of the cars already electric, and with several companies with different models like Zip Cars, Car2Go, Turbi here in Brazil. And I will take, a specific, look into Maven, because Maven is General Motors company, So we are talking about a company that used to do cars and to sell them to the population, doing car sharing, and after COVID. And so this was already happening, before pandemic. And after that, we have a situation that we had last week, a report coming from the Financial Times telling us the prosperity that we have in companies during the pandemic. And there's no new on that in the sense of what was, those companies, who are those companies? And we have, most of them are e-commerce companies or health e-commerce. The very first one is Amazon. And the fourth one is Tesla. What is something strange in that is that Tesla is the only company between 10 companies that are prospering in the pandemic that is completely related to mobility, okay? And the relation Tesla has with mobility outside the new technology they are presenting is something very old, The changing on mass mobility or car mobility from gasoline to electric is not a new thing. The way to do it might be new, but it's not a new discussion. And that's the only company on mobility it's among the 100 companies that are prospering in the pandemic. On the other way, the rides ones, well, the rides that can adapt to the situation and are resilient, they are going up. The pooling is going down. And see, the rides, the ones that can adapt means the ones that people are not afraid to go into car. As Gloria told us, people prefer to go in cars, but people prefer to go in cabs. People prefer to go in Ubers. Well, it depends. It depends on how those systems adapt to the situation, okay? Pooling it's a poor situation that they are not adapting. So if you're going to a bike, you are under some kind of problems because you're over there in an open area and you're transpiring, you're respiring, inspiring, expiration, and everything. And on the other side, you're taking a car that you don't know, who was in the car before you, and so pooling is going down. Sharing is struggling, okay? And you have the delivery, meaning that you have on the other side more bikers, more scooters, more riders on the street, just doing the diversification of the delivery. In a sense, what you're facing in the urban areas is the changing, coming from a centric system where we are really worried about transportation, people from one neighborhood to another, to a polycentric urban planning systems and development. But I'm saying, I tell you, a very short example of yesterday. Yesterday I was in my office. Right now I'm at home, in my home office, but yesterday I was in my office, and we on that area we have 8,000 people running every day, and I was there yesterday, and we didn't have, and we are running into flexibility right now. We didn't have even 20% of those over there. And the planning, looking into those companies that are pretty much, international companies, that they're not coming back this year. They might be having people like 1 or 2 days a week, but they're not coming back. So there's a completely change, in the sense of what's demanding. Of course, the relationship between the cities and the ministries and the companies that are used to run in the usual way, is going to be complex, because you have to go to a bus company and say, hey, we can, make it a little better. We can have more room internally, but there's a competition between that and people staying at their homes. And that there is a complete consequence on that on two senses. The first one, of course, is on emissions. You have more people working from their homes or their neighborhoods. They're going to emit less carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, gases, of course. That's one thing. But the other thing is completely related with the economic recovery that we're going to see. It's kind of awkward. We think that the economic recovery is going to happen the same way we did have on track beforehand. So, and when we talk about this spread way of living cities, urban and transportation and mobility, we are talking about several new economies, small economies that are completely related with a green recovery on SMEs rather than reinforcing the big ones. And even though if we're talking about emerging countries, we are talking about countries that are used to informal people working. And the informal people working to formality, the easiest way to do it is through SMEs that pretty much answers for most of the employment in the world. So this scenario pretty much says that we are probably, you have a special look when you're talking about transportation and urban mobility. You have to have a special look on what the innovation and technology is bringing us in the sense of how they respond to the demands that we have from the population, from the cities right now. I really think, and I'm seeing several countries that we are all fighting to come back to some way to the track that we were into, and we listening to this speech saying, "Oh, okay, we are going to a new reality, new economy, new scenario." Okay, we are listening to that every time, but in fact, we are going into a new relation, between people and employment and economy, and we have several ways to accelerate it if we can respond to that in this way. In the other sense, it's going to be hard if we keep on tracking on the same things. I'm going to thank you guys. My time is running out, and let's see what our experts are going to bring us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for bringing the issue of the new data sources that exist. And in this world, and for the transport challenges that we face, and decarbonizing, economic recovery, one of the things that we in the ITF mentioned in several of our projects, it's the need to have sound data, the need to also use better data that is already available, but sometimes not available to the public institutions, but to use that data for better analysis and better understanding, and with that also generate better policies to address these issues. But now, and a bit continuing here in the topic of cities, I introduce Oliver La. He's the head of the mobility and the International Cooperation Research Unit at the Wuppertal Institute. The Wuppertal Institute, as I mentioned, is implementing the Decarbonizing Transport in Emerging Economies project together with the ITF. Their work is particularly focused on the cities and the mobility in cities. And Oliver, I'll give the floor to you now. Good evening.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be here, honorable ministers, dear colleagues from the BMU and from the ITF. It's great to be here with you. Thanks for touching on our role already. So we'd like to bring in the urban perspective on this. And that's the Wuppertal Institute. So it's a think tank based in Germany and owned by the government of North Rhine-Westphalia. And we're around 200 people based in Wuppertal and in Berlin. And into this project, we bring the city's perspective, and our work revolves around supporting decision makers at the local and national level, so connecting those two quite essential dots, but also bringing in the perspective of mobility operators and local entrepreneurs, in particular in this time of the economic recovery. We would like to identify not just the policies at the local and national level, but also opportunities for business models of low carbon mobility services. That involves technical support, capacity building on urban governance, on business modeling, impact assessment, and policy integration between the local and international level. And that sort of follows a structured approach that we bring into this partnership with our friends from the ITF. And our perspective starts from informing decision makers on a range of tools, methods, guides on low carbon mobility solutions. And then we work between city officials from various cities that we work with and try to inspire them to take up solutions that have been developed by their peers from around the world. We build on a partnership of 20 living labs in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and over 100 implementation partners in all those regions. So there's quite a robust range of partnerships that we can bring into this. And then we try to initiate small-scale interventions and then bring them to scale. That builds on operational models and business models that we adapt to the local context. And then we work very closely with our partner cities, and this is where we are particularly enthusiastic about this partnership with Argentina on innovative solutions that we intend to implement, test the technical feasibility, work on the cost-benefit analysis and the institutional and governance framework. And then the fifth level is working on the impact. This is, of course, where we intend to work closely with also financing partners, but also business and industry that can take those solutions forward. And this work that we bring into this project builds on another EC-funded project, which is called Urban Pathways and the Urban Electric Mobility Initiative, both of which we implement with our friends from Habitat, and another project called Solutions Plus, which helps us also to support local entrepreneurs and businesses on taking up innovative business solutions. And we're very delighted to work on this project with our ITF friends. In Argentina, we have had an initial engagement already with local partners from Argentina. And we are about to engage with a couple of local authorities on the local impact assessment and the work that we can do on the capacity building and needs assessment. And we will continue to engage with cities on identifying the technical and capacity needs, identify suitable partnerships, and then develop policy scenarios that mutually strengthen the local and national actions towards the decarbonization pathways for Argentina. But then we'd also, of course, like to reach out more broadly to the region and facilitate this exchange with the other partner countries in this program. And that's sort of a key cornerstone for our approach in this exchange. And we would like to thank again the German Environment Ministry, which we are blessed to have a good long-standing partnership with, and our friends from the ITF, and of course also a big thanks to the government of Argentina for this great support. And yeah, we really look forward to this collaboration in the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Thank you very much for your intervention and these reflections on also the future of the work, particularly in respect to the cities. I must say that the decarbonizing transport in emerging economies, it goes on 4 different countries and regions. In each of the countries and regions, the focus is slightly different. In the Argentinian case, also due to the nature of the country, and you had the opportunity to listen to the intervention from Minister Mario Meoni, the issue of the freight transport over long distances, it's a very relevant issue. So in Argentina, the focus is a bit more on the freight part, but as you've seen from the previous interventions and even some of the sessions we will have throughout July, we are also addressing the urban issues and the passenger issues. And I must mention also that ITF, in parallel with the Decarbonizing Transport in Emerging Economies project, and Youngte mentioned that, is also working in the decarbonizing transport in Latin American cities, which in one of the cities being Buenos Aires too. So, but after this short explanation, I move now to the last speaker, not of the day. It's not the last speaker of the day, but it's the last speaker of this session, Carolina Chantrel from the Associação Sustentar, which has been one of the key persons in the organization of this event. But Carolina, I think it's still good morning there in Argentina. So good morning, and I give you now the floor.
Muchas gracias, Francisco.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Good morning, everyone, and good evening, everyone. I would like to say, first and foremost, that I'm really honored to be collaborating on this project and this conference, having opened this event with renowned authorities from different organizations we are working with. I would like to especially thank Yang Kim for initiating this dialogue and organizing this event. Also to thank the representation of the Ministry of the Environment in Germany, Mr. Minister, you are responsible for the financing of this project and in many of the projects we work on. I would like to particularly thank Mario Meoni, the Ministry of Transport of Argentina, without whom, whose joint work with ITF, this project would not be possible, and also for the will to participate and support in everything this entails. Also, I would like to thank Minister Gloria Hutt for her participation, Francisco Maciel as president of the platform Let's LAC, and seconding what Oliver was saying, as part of the participating organization, I think this is a key space for the collaboration and to develop and build capacities collectively in the region in Argentina, as well as in global level. I would like to introduce myself. As Francisco was saying, I'm Carolina Chantril. I'm responsible for the coordination of the Sustentar Association. This association is a civil organization, it's an NGO, it's a non-for-profit organization in Argentina devoted to the promotion of sustainability and to support the development of capacities. From the association, we coordinate the working group Let's LAC, and we are co-responsible for the group at global level for Let's Global Partnership. Sustentar is, since 2014, is responsible for transportation also, and also part of the board and of directors and collaborating at the international level. Just like the preceding authorities, I would like to welcome all participants that are joining us today, and I would like to thank the audience and the speakers and authorities that are going to be part of the conference in the next weeks. Regarding the dynamic of the conference, I will take what Mr. Furtado said at the beginning. The conference will have 10 virtual sessions. The first will take place after this opening.
Aquí me gustaría compartirles de nuevo.
I would like to share once again the agenda for the day. After this session, tomorrow will be the first thematic session that will focus on road freight, and then we will have railway, waterways, urban logistics, transport, metropolitan governments, and the relation with transport and territorial section, with the closing session to decarbonizing policies. We invite you to log into the different sessions, and together we are going to explore the different policies of decarbonizing policies and how they can contribute to resilience, in particular in a context of severe stress caused by COVID-19 pandemic. All panels are made up of decision makers, strategic developers, and experts. After each presentation, there will be dialogues and Q&A moderated, receiving questions from the audience. We hope this exchange can strengthen dialogue and collective knowledge and the challenges of freight transportation to diminish the impact on carbon footprint in the light of the COP commitment in a crisis situation as this. The conference is open and free for all. Prior registration sessions will be recorded and will be a part of the, we'll have a synthesis. All sessions will have simultaneous interpretation into English, Spanish, and Portuguese. We will be focusing on a dialogue in networks, especially Twitter, using the hashtags that you see on the screen, and LinkedIn group associated to this conference. Participants and interested members can be used to share knowledge and ask questions. Without further ado, once again, I would like to thank all the authorities that were a part of this opening. It is an honor to be part of this group, and we are going to take a 10-minute break to later resume with the first panel called Decarbonization of Transport and Resilience that will set the tone for exchanges in the next few weeks. Thank you very much for your participation, and we will resume in 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very muchas gracias.
As she was mentioning, now this with her speech, we close the first session of the conference, but not the conference for today, because we will take just a short 10-minute break, and after this short 10-minute break, we will come with the next session, decarbonizing, economic recovery, and resilience, which is the overall theme of this conference. And we'll have Nestor Roa from the Inter-American Development Bank. We'll have Jose Barbero, reputed expert in transportation in Argentina. We'll have Jean-Paul Rodrigue, also international expert on the subject. And this will to discuss a bit in a deeper way how to exactly coordinate these three desperate things, but that need to go together: decarbonizing, economic recovery, and increased resilience of the transportation system. I won't say much more. I'll just thank again every guest speaker, particularly Minister Mario Meoni from Argentina, Minister Gloria Hutt from Chile, States Director General Carsten Sach from Germany, and Young Tae Kim from our Secretary General from the ITF for their presence, all of the previous speakers too. I think there's a lot we can take from each of their speeches. Building back better, as was mentioned by the Director General Karsten Sach, it's really key at this moment. The broad overview given by Minister Meoni of the initiatives that are going on in Argentina is another highlight of this first session. And initiatives, I won't go into all of them, but that include the move towards electrification, also modal shift both in passengers and in the freight sector. Minister Gloria Hutt brought the perspective from from a city perspective, highlighting what a large-scale experience this crisis has been, and how this allows us to also have an opportunity to reconfigure the city space and to build back better, and to have an economic recovery based on sustainability. Francisco Maciel also mentioned the issue of new data sources, new mobility forms that will also play a role, and some of them are being affected positively, others negatively with this crisis, but it's also a sector, important sector to have an eye on. But without further ado, and I'll close this first session, and in 10 minutes we will be back. Thank you very much, everyone.